go time.
The boys are back. That's right, Florida Man Sports is here with another exciting episode. So just sit back, relax, and enjoy the ride. This is Florida Man Sports.
Welcome back to Florida Man Sports.
Let's go.
Now, guys, we read the emails, we read the tweets. We know you guys want us to really focus on the NFL with it being right around the corner. The NFL power rankings are out, so we are going to go ahead and discuss a little bit of the power rankings in this show. We're going to put a spotlight on a few teams this show and discuss, see if it's one of your teams we need to go ahead and break down. We're going to really discuss on what teams and players are going to be falling off this year and which teams are going to go ahead and rise to the top. So if it's one of yours, one of your players, we'll see.
Rise to the top.
Why you always bring innuendo to everything that's being said? This is a mature show.
No,
Chris.
I'm just saying, like, that's okay.
Okay.
Listen, folks, like and share, streaming on all platforms. Florida Man Sports. Where are we starting off at, Johnny?
Well, Chris, we're going to go ahead and break it down here with the 5 brand new head coaches.
Yes.
This is essentially their first time being a head coach. There are some coaches that are getting the first shot with a new team, like Jim Harbaugh. We're not going to discuss those guys. We're discussing Mike McDonald, the Seattle Seahawks, Antonio Pierce with the Vegas Raiders,
right,
who had an interim title towards the end of the last season, but his first full year as a head coach with the Raiders. Dave Canales, Carolina Panthers, Brian Callahan for the Tennessee Titans, Gerard Mayo for the New England Patriots. So, Chris, please let me know, which of these coaches are going to have the most success the first year?
Yeah, not only going to tell you the most success, Johnny, I'm going to tell you who's going to probably have the least amount of success as well.
Okay.
When you look at the resumes, Johnny, you just named them, right? McDonald, Callahan, Mayo, and Canales, all of them have the right experience. What I mean by that, folks, is they've done their time in different teams and different coaching positions before taking on, like you just mentioned, the head coaching position. So the only outlier for me, Johnny, is Antonio Pierce. You're talking about a guy that I know he had a great NFL career, but controversy has followed him all this time. The Plaxico Burress incident. You remember that when he was a player with the getting shot at the nightclub? He didn't talk about it. If you guys remember what happened there.
He ain't no snitch.
In 2022, he resigned after recruiting violations with his only coaching experience at the University of Arizona, so that you have that controversy that followed him there. And then now he just becomes a coach as an interim coach. And now he's the head coach for the Oakland Raiders, for the Las Vegas Raiders. Excuse me. That's how old I am. I just aged myself.
Yeah, but the NCAA is a bunch of Nazis, so I'm not going to count that against him. And he didn't snitch on his boy. I'm not hey, you haven't said anything negative yet.
But what that tells me, though, is when you have, like, I call that a rah-rah coach. A coach that comes in, has instant success, is what he did. He got, McDonald got fired. He comes in, gets all the groups excited. They win a couple of games, and now he's the head coach. So when you look at that, when you look at the strength of the schedules that all the teams have.
So he's the worst?
I have him as having the worst out of the 5.
Okay.
Having the worst record, having the worst season. And you also got to look at it. He's got Minshew as his starting quarterback. I know we'll talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah.
So he doesn't even have the tools, even if he wants them to be successful.
All right.
And then real quick, as far as like the best one, when you look at the schedule and the coaching and all that, I have the Titans between those 5 coaches. I have the Titans having the best season. So Brian Callahan, he's going to have the best year, in my opinion, of that group.
He makes the best car breaks.
With Pierce.
First, what are the 3 grades of Callahan brake pads?
Being last on that list. What are your thoughts?
First, let me break it down. We agree on one thing on that whole list here, but the Patriots are going to be terrible this year. They're going to be terrible this year. So just right off the bat, not going to go ahead and do this whole long novel that Chris just did here. The Patriots having the hardest schedule and having the mess that they have, which we'll get into a little bit more, they're going to have the absolute worst record at the end of this year.
No.
So by default, Gerard Mayo is not going to have any success. This is not going to happen. Not this year. This isn't the year for the Patriots. And it's fine with it. Panthers, they had horrendous year last year. There's only one place to go but up. Dave Canales doesn't have the track record. I don't know how he became a head coach. He had 1 year offensive coordinator for the Bucs, and then all of a sudden, here's the head coaching job, the same position. I don't get it. So I don't expect the Carolina Panthers to do much of anything. I don't like the Seahawks schedule. So for me, when it comes down to it's the Raiders and the Titans.
I got to correct you, Johnny. I got to
Okay.
correct you. Canales was at USC with Pete Carroll. He followed him and was for years with the Seahawks, Johnny.
Yes.
As a quarterbacks coach at different, different positions.
Okay.
And then the offensive coordinator last year.
Nobody cares.
So he's more than qualified.
No, he's not more than qualified.
He
He's
revitalized
not,
Geno
he's not
Smith,
more than qualified.
Baker Mayfield, and now he's going to try to do that with Bryce Young.
Do you know how many former players become running backs coaches, wide receiver coaches, quarterback coaches?
He's been around, though. That's the whole point, that he's been around the league.
Those things don't really matter, translate into being a good head coach.
Except they do.
They don't.
Okay.
What you need coordinator experience for an extended period of time or some college football experience. You went ahead and said that, oh my God, the Raiders coach only has, college. He was a head coach at a major college program. Yes, it didn't work out, but he has that experience. This guy has 1 year as a coordinator. He did an okay job as the coordinator for the Bucs, and all of a sudden gets him a head coaching position. No, so I don't think Carolina has their own problems. Will Bryce Young kind of get out of that? You had a terrible rookie year. Everything was bad. It can only go up for Carolina, but still. It's going to come down to the Raiders and the Titans. Minshew is going to be the starting guy for the Raiders. You have Levis going to be the starting guy for the Titans. It's going to come down to those two players and how they play. But when it's all said and done, I expect, for me, the Titans to actually, I agree with you on that here, to have.
You did all that rant. We're on the same place with the team, the best
yeah,
teams.
But
in the Titans.
I don't think that the Raiders are going to be bad. It's going to be right there. I just don't know it. I like Minshew.
Mm-hmm.
I do like Minshew. We're going to get into everything a little later on the show, but it's going to come down to the Raiders and the Titans. I just can't put my money on the Raiders.
I've got, for what it's worth, too, I've got the Raiders and the Patriots in the middle of the pack because I said it in previous episodes, so I'm sticking with that they're going to have a better year than expected. So I've got the Titans number 1, Seahawks number 2, Patriots number 3 real quick, Panthers number 4 because they improved a little bit, and then the Raiders in the 5.
Yeah, my bottom of the barrel, Patriots and the Panthers are right there. Then obviously the Seahawks. But no, then Raiders and then Titans. That's why I see it, where it's going to come down obviously from 5 to 1st. I know what's going to break down for the new head coaches, but we'll see. I'm just excited for the NFL.
Dude, it's back, baby. It's back.
So, we can agree, disagree with our coaches, but let's go and shift the focus specifically more, Chris, to our players.
Yes.
Now, we want to put a spotlight on which players specific. I begged Chris. I said, Chris, I know you like giving me a long list, but just give me one. Give me one player who's going to fall off, who had a good year, who's falling off, and give me one player who didn't have a down season last year that's going to go ahead and rise to the top. The creme de la creme. Who's the guy going to be?
So I did what you asked me to do. I only have one for each.
Okay.
I only have one for each.
Which
one do you want to hear first?
Okay. I was just about to get to that.
Okay.
So let's go ahead and start off, Chris, with who is bouncing back? Who is the dude that's bouncing back that's going to recover from a bad year last year?
Wait, so we got to be real careful when we do this, right? Because I am the returning champion in fantasy football, so I know that all the advice that this is why he asks these questions.
This isn't a fantasy.
So
this isn't fantasy-wise.
It is in the sense that then you're going to probably draft him, and if you do, I'm going to burn your house down. If you draft whoever I just say right now.
This is okay. One, we're going to have a fantasy show. You alluded to it. We had it last year. Great fantasy show.
Yeah, but you're trying to steal material.
What I'm talking about is that who's bouncing back.
I understand what you're asking. I understand what you're asking.
Obviously, if they have a really good year and they're bouncing back, by default, fantasy-wise, they're going to do that. But this is not what we're talking about. We're not talking about who's going to be the most points. Okay. What I'm talking about is not even who's necessarily going to be the best player. It just comes down to who fell off.
Well,
and
to me, bounce back, I interpret it as breakout. I interpreted that they did not have a year that they wanted to have. It's not
breakout. Breakout is their first year ever doing. Nobody saw it coming. This is a bounce back. This isn't nobody saw it coming.
Okay. All right, same player. It's same thing. It's all right. We have the same. We have a different interpretation, but the same thing. I get it. So for me, it's Chris Olaf. You're talking about the wide receiver for the New Orleans Saints. You look at last season, Johnny. You're talking about 87 receptions. He didn't eclipse 100 receptions per game as the number one option. And you're talking about 5 touchdowns. That's a very low, very bad. Listen, folks. Listen. Very low, very bad season for him. And I'm going to tell you something else. This coming season, why I have him as coming up this year, no Michael Thomas. So there's no more. I know that he was injured last year, but they were always talking about when he's going to play, and when he plays, he takes away time from him. So now he's wide receiver 1. You're talking about Rashid Shaheed is the next in the pecking order, who only had 700 yards last year. Okay, this is year 2 of David Carr. So now you got year 2 of you guys working together as a wide receiver 1.
Okay.
So to the victor goes the spoils, Johnny. For me, it's Chris Olaf, and I don't care. You can put it however you want. Here's a guy who did not have the year that he expected to have last year. I expect him to have over 100 receptions this year. I expect him to have over 1,400 yards this year. And more importantly, I expect the touchdowns to be in the double digits. So for me, it's Chris Olaf. That's a name to watch, a name to look out for. He's a bona fide wide receiver 1, and he's going to bounce back compared to how he did year 2 for him.
Okay. I apologize to the guys listening right now that Chris doesn't understand basic English. So when you break down, hey, who is the bounce back player? What he gave you was actually a very good breakout player that most of you are not familiar with. Somehow who's more of a sleeper, not so much a sleeper, but somebody who's actually going to go ahead and have a breakout season.
I want to hear what you have to say, but I'm going to have to interrupt you because another thing of a bounce back player, somebody who was drafted, which has happened last year, who was drafted where they were drafted,
did he make a
and
Pro
they
Bowl?
did not have the
Has he
year.
made a Pro Bowl?
They did not have
Has
the
he
year
made a
they
Pro Bowl?
expected to have.
Has he made a Pro?
That's irrelevant. He needs to bounce back. He had a bad year by all accounts.
It's not
where he
bounce
was
back,
drafted,
bro.
where he was
It's-
picked.
oh
He had
my
a bad
God.
year. Like I said, that's my bounce
he hasn't
back.
had.
Once again, I'm right. You're wrong.
The dude.
Who do you have?
The
Who do you
dude.
have?
No. I'm going to get into that.
Who do you have so that I can lay the I can destroy who you have?
No
Go
problem.
ahead.
But you want to have a bounce back year with a guy who hasn't had a career year yet. He's never had a career year. So now you want to sit here and be like, oh, he's going to bounce back from what, Chris? What's he bouncing back from? He's bouncing back from
a player,
nothing.
I know that you don't understand this concept, Johnny, but when a player does not perform how they're expected to, the following year they can bounce back and have a breakout year. See how I put it all together for you?
No, see, somebody like
stop
that.
killing unnecessary brain cells that I can't waste on you. Who do you have?
This isn't my player, but like what you're referencing is somebody like Calvin Ridley, who fell off, who was the year before suspended, but has made a Pro Bowl, and somebody can say like, no, now he's going to bounce back. Your player has never made a Pro Bowl.
And now when Johnny tries to steal this for fantasy football, we'll have a different conversation. Who do you have, Johnny?
Anyway, this isn't a fantasy conversation, and I'll never select the player that you recommend, sir.
Okay.
But my player actually makes sense.
Who is it?
When we're talking bounce back, it's none other. It's common sense, guys. It's Joe Burrow.
Low fruit.
Low
fruit. Hey, I should have known. Low fruit incoming.
It's not so much that
terrible.
while you're looking at somebody like
People are
Joe,
literally turning it off right now.
while you're looking at Joe Burrow, because they're like, who the heck are you talking about?
Joe Burrow. Hey guys, you guys want to know something? Here's a guy who didn't play and now he's playing.
Okay,
terrible.
So I'm bringing up Joe Burrow specifically one reason. It wasn't just the fact that the obvious that he was injured and he came back here. It's the fact that he's going to come back with such a vengeance. I honestly think that Joe Burrow is going to be the MVP coming into this at the end of this year. It's the O-line has been improved. You obviously have Chase, who's playing for a record contract. You have the last year with Higgins. So there's certain things in place for this team to kind of ball out. And Burrow's going to be the major benefactor from everything that's happening with the Bengals. And that's the reason. It's not just the fact that he's coming back. He was injured last year, missed most of the season. It's just that the Bengals did a few little tweaks here and there, and you have the key players trying to go ahead and play for a contract, not just with the Bengals, but with other teams, and those things matter. And because of that, Burrow's going to ball out. Expect an MVP year from Joe Burrow. That's what I'm talking about when you're talking about a comeback player, not some schmuck that most of you never heard of, who's never had a really even good year, but because he was drafted kind of high, and now he's going to go and bounce back. Moron.
Florida Man Sports. We are streaming on all major platforms. If you would please like, share, and subscribe. If you would also please on X comment of how And I know that some kids watch the show, so I'm going to watch because I'm just so like infuriated right now. The low fruit that Johnny always gives you guys, like it's just you guys are always expecting it. Like people can tune in to 900 major networks right now and are going to say the same nonsense of Joe Burrow. 900. You're not giving people anything that they don't already know.
Yeah.
So why are you wasting our time? Is the real question.
Yeah. I was thinking the same thing here because you're bringing up. You might as well bring up a WNBA player because more people have heard of those players than the player you just referenced here, and it doesn't even make sense with the category. Okay. He doesn't fit in the category I mentioned.
Except for the fact that he was a wide receiver one last year who did not perform to expectations, who was drafted high, who needs a bounce back season, and I just gave him to you.
He wasn't a wide receiver one.
He was. Yes, he was.
Since Chris, you've completely fallen off on this show. Please tell me who's the guy that's going to fall off. And since you gave me some nonsense and some player who's decent year or great year, but now it's time for the decline.
Okay.
Who's falling off, just like you in this
Okay.
podcast.
And then please add the hashtag because this is going to be a great one. It's not that little fruit you like to give. Folks, it's none other than who's going to fall off this year than the great King Henry. Look, you're talking about a guy who's 30 years old, going into his second team. This is what you already know.
Making sense. Good job, Chris.
Here's
Chris
what you
making sense.
Here's
Finally.
what you don't know. Here's what you don't know. Okay, at the end of the day, he's not you kind of know this, but you don't know the numbers. 27 receptions last year, so he's not really a pass catching type of running back who's turning 30, who's going into a team that is not going to need him as much as they did in Tennessee. So when you have a 30-year-old that you're paying all this money to, you're doing that for the playoffs. So from a fantasy perspective, from a regular season perspective, Johnny, you're not expecting him to carry the ball 25, 30 times per game on top of the fact that Lamar Jackson likes to run the ball himself. So age, the new team, say whatever you want to say about it. They're projecting for him 250 carries, 1,000 yards, and 11 touchdowns. I'm telling you right now, I'm going to go on record. I think he's going to have about 150 to 180 carries and under 10 touchdowns. So not because he lost a step, but because everything is there for him to kind of take a back seat and save himself. For me, it's King Henry who's going to fall off this year and who you should be looking out to not draft this season.
Yes, for once, Chris actually makes some type of sense and actually follow with the program and put the right player in the right category.
He just gets smacked around. He just gets smacked around.
With King George, it becomes an issue because of the age of 30, and everybody knows that's the plateau where you just completely fall off there. So that is that thing. What's that? What I always tell you, Chris, that you always fall for that. You grab that little barren fruit. So the 30-year-old running back, yes, that makes sense. The only 30-year-old plus that has any success of recent memory is Mostert for the Dolphins. But the difference is that dude was a track star in college. So with speed, I guess for whatever reason, it kind of you have a little bit of a longer life in that running back position. We all know King Henry is all about power. And the power backs, they don't last that long. So I honestly, I'll probably think that this may be his last year or coming on. Remember what happened to Sean Alexander, the MVP for the Seattle Seahawks, who was on the cover of Madden and just completely fell off the cliff. There's so many stories.
Yeah, and again, I can't stress enough, right? The Ravens are a team that they don't utilize. They're not going to utilize him the way that they did in Tennessee. So this kind of helps him if you really think about it, because if they save his legs, Johnny, I would love to see King Henry one last ride in the playoffs do some serious damage because he's only getting 150, 180 carries this season.
Well, remember, they have a rookie running back who is speed. So I think that dual attack of using maybe King Henry mainly the goal line and the power back, using him on third downs, and then using the rookie with speed on first and second if necessary. So they're going to be smart with King Henry and hope it kind of works out here. But I do think this is a better fit than what you're saying with the Ravens and King Henry. I think it's going to work out well. Take a little bit of the load off of Lamar Jackson, who likes to run a little too much, and we need to keep him from getting injured.
So enough stroking my back and my ego because I destroyed you. Who do you got as far as falling off?
Okay, that's what you took from that.
That's all I got.
That's not at all.
That's all I got out of that. That's all I got out of that. What do you got?
It's clear to me the main player this year is going to fall. There's plenty. We both have a list of players that are going to rise up and fall off, but we have to pick our number one guy. The number one guy is going to go ahead and rise up and fall off. That's why I went with Joe Burrow, number one guy, and you went with basically Shanika Holsqua, whatever you said there, and you went with players that nobody knows about. And then you go with King Henry, and I'm going with the main dudes falling off, is none other than your boy, Baker Mayfield. Baker Mayfield had a career year last year with, let me see, and completion percentage, touchdowns, yards, but the NFC South has greatly.
You guys ever watch somebody get stabbed live on TV?
Greatly improved. He's greatly improved. It's going to be very difficult for Baker to not just repeat. He's going to have to really step his game up since the NFC South has improved. And usually, especially when we're talking about sequels, the number two is always nowhere near as good as number one, especially when the cast is exactly the same. You're trying to run it back with essentially the same squad. It's just a recipe for disaster. I'm hoping for the Bucs to go ahead and have a decent year this year. They went 9-8 last year. They won a playoff game. I'm finding it hard to believe for the Bucs and Baker Mayfield to repeat that with essentially the exact same team. So that's why Baker, it's just the odds of you going ahead. You had a great year. You earned that contract. I'm not knocking you, Baker, but I very much doubt that you're going to be able to repeat, if not excel, when people expect you to go ahead and exceed what you actually had done last year. I don't see it coming. I don't think it's possible. Every team in the NFC South has improved except the Bucs. The Bucs remain the same.
Except the Bucs.
And if you're not moving forwards, you're moving backwards. The Bucs are moving backwards. The Tampa Bay Rays, I called before the season, is that their 5-year run of the playoffs are done. And it appears to be that way. The same thing, the Buccaneers have a 4-year run of the playoffs. This year, I expect the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, that playoff run to end. The Bucs are going to fall off, mainly because Baker Mayfield is not going to be able to repeat the magic he had last year.
So I'm going to wait to completely destroy, completely annihilate you when we talk about the power rankings, where I'm going to just destroy your every being. But, well, I'm so mad right now. But
you're going to destroy my beans?
But what I will say is this. Your argument is just so silly because what we're talking about, Johnny, is we're talking about falling off. I gave you King Henry as an example for falling off. So you can say that Baker Mayfield can have a bad season. That doesn't mean he's falling off. So what you're basically trying to say, Johnny, is that he's going to have a tear, like he's going to have like more interceptions than touchdowns falling off. And if that's not going to happen, no,
that's not what I'm saying.
No, I'm asking. So if that's not what you're saying, then he's not really falling off. So what are you talking about?
Okay.
What are you talking? He can have a bad season, Johnny, and it's not falling off. Continue. Atrocious.
What you just said was the most asinine thing I ever heard. So according to Chris, if he has a bad year, he didn't fall off. This guy just had a career year in completion percentage, touchdowns.
Do you understand
yards.
the meaning of falling off?
Yeah. Are you trying to tell me, like, hey, what that first category you gave me here? So a player who had career years in everything that matters as a quarterback, who actually led the team into the playoffs and won a game in the playoffs. And I'm telling you, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are not even going to make the playoffs this year. Okay. Mainly because
we can go to the next topic.
Baker is going to not only did not make the playoffs,
I'm gonna burn you with this
Baker is going to have roughly half of the touchdown passes he had this past year. Okay. His completion percentage is going to dip at least 5%.
Let's continue.
There's so many things he's going to fall off. So yes, Chris, I'm sorry to break the common sense things to you. Is if he has a bad year, he's falling off because last year was his best year ever.
Continue.
It was his best year ever, and got him a contract. So a bad year means he's fell off, Chris.
Okay.
So you can talk all the nonsense. You're about to go ahead and shed a tear. We talk about the players. Let's shift from that. Let's move to teams, Chris. So who is going to fall off in our team-wise in the NFL? Who had a good year? Who was whatever playoffs or whatever, and now it's time for them to fall off? What's your team?
Well, I'm thinking one step ahead because I'm done. I'm done following Johnny's there. I'm so mad right now. Anyways, I'm gonna talk about a team that people are expecting this year to be successful and they're not. Yeah. So this is not necessarily falling off because last year they didn't have a good year. So don't jump on me. Don't jump on me. Don't jump on me. Don't jump on me. Don't jump on me.
Why don't you understand basic?
Don't jump on me. Everybody is saying that the Atlanta Falcons are going to win the division.
Everyone is
saying that the Atlanta Falcons are going to win the division, are going to win 10 games this year or more. Everybody is saying that the Atlanta Falcons, they're even higher in the power rankings than the Bucs are. So for me, a team that is going to surprise people and flop and is not going to do what they need to do is the Atlanta Falcons. They're going to lay an egg. They have the easiest schedule in the NFL this season. The easiest schedule. And because of that, people are jumping on the bandwagon with Kirk Cousins. So I'm gonna tell you something. I did a tweet or an X, if you will, on X, and it went viral. And I'm gonna share it with our fans here. Okay. And this is what I said. It amazes me how people jump on the wagon of a team whose 35-year-old quarterback, who hasn't played with them a snap, and is coming off an Achilles injury with a head coach on his second stint that has a 21-38 record as a head coach, is now supposed to win the division. And that went viral, Johnny. That went viral.
Yeah, sure.
So, to me, it's the Falcons because everybody, especially this guy wants to talk about the Bucs having a bad year, but it's the Falcons who are going to falter, who are going to lay an egg, and who are not going to reach the expectations that people want this season.
My level of annoyance is at
you want to talk about the Bucs? That's what you get.
All-time high.
That's what you get.
All-time high.
That's what you get.
This guy picks the same thing we went over in the first category. Hey, who's falling off? Let's pick a team who didn't make the playoffs, who haven't made the playoffs in some time, and let's pick them. They're going to fall off. They haven't won anything as of late, Chris. How can you pick a team? You don't make any sense, okay? Let's make it very clear. Who was my guy that's falling off? Baker Mayfield. What team is falling off? Simple. It's the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Tampa Bay were 9-8 last year. They're not going to. You can say whatever you want, but you cannot run it back with the exact same squad. Tampa Bay already tried this. They tried it in year 3 of Brady. So let's run it back with the exact same squad.
That was year 2, but okay.
It was year 3.
We won the Super Bowl year 1. Year 2, we re-signed everybody, including Sue, and ran it back.
Anyway.
Lost to the Rams.
I didn't reference.
No football. No football. Know what you're talking about.
No,
yeah.
we didn't. We didn't.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm referencing.
I didn't. You're not the Bucks.
We ran back the exact same team
for
in
year
2. 3. In year 3, we lost.
For year 2,
we lost an offensive
year
coordinator.
3, Brady retired
and
came back. Know your stuff.
Yes,
Continue.
he did. And it was the exact same team, and it was a disaster. So the 1 and 2, there were key players, obviously with Antonio Brown. Certain things that came in the mix that allowed us to go ahead and win and do certain things. Antonio Brown gets kicked out in the year 2 because of nonsense he pulls. Those things kind of happen. But what I'm referencing is that it doesn't work when you have the exact same squad and everybody else in the division. You want to see her knock the Falcons. The Falcons actually went and made some moves. Yes, one ridiculously dumb move in Penix, but still they made some moves. They greatly improved their team. Everything from the coach to their quarterback to their corners to they're going to utilize their running back this time around. You like to sit here and talk about on paper. On paper, this is the best team in the NFC South. On paper, this is not.
I needed to laugh. Thank you.
This is not even
I needed
close.
to laugh.
The Tampa Bay Buccaneers are going to be a sub 500 record. It's going to be an abysmal year to be a Tampa Bay Buccaneers fan. And it's fine. It's just 1 year. But Baker is not going to repeat the magic he had last year. They didn't give him any extra weapons. They didn't do anything. They didn't really draft well. So I don't care what your number one fan here has to say.
Okay.
And
don't worry, we'll get to the power rankings.
So it comes down to which team is falling off. They're not going to make the playoffs, let alone win a playoff game. So, yes, it is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Chris. So, who is rising to the occasion? You're going to tell me. According to Chris, what he's been doing, he's going to tell you the Kansas City Chiefs are going to go ahead, going to go ahead and bounce back.
I know that was the bounce back. I know that was just like your low fruit in the last segment. It's just terrible.
Anyway,
so folks, Florida Man Sports here. I got to take Johnny to school. I got to take Johnny to school once again. The biggest bounce back, the biggest one is the one that's going to win the division, folks. And you're going to hear it here first, Florida Man Sports. It's the New York Jets, Jets. The New York Jets.
No.
They're going to win. They're going to go from 7-10 to 10-7 or more. And that's all you need to win the division. You've got the number 1 defense in that division right there for the New York Jets. You're back with quarterback.
Number 1 defense.
On that division. Mm-hmm. You're talking about the fact that Aaron Rodgers, he can stay healthy, of course. That's that contingency as always. And you're talking about a team that is in win-now mode. Defense got better over the summer. They had a pretty good draft. So for me, it's the Jets who are going to go 10-7 or more and win this division.
So you're saying that the Jets have the best team on paper?
No, not on paper, because on paper they already checked it. But also literally already checked it because last year when you saw the defense play, you said, man, if only Aaron Rodgers was there playing, right? Remember that last year? I know that you have the terrible memory, but last year when you watched the games, they actually proved that had they had Aaron Rodgers, they would have had a much better season. Everybody knows that. You see how you just literally got rocked because you don't know anything about football. You see how you just got destroyed with that? Chris, that just bounced right back at you.
It didn't.
Oh my God.
Didn't. See, Chris just says things and hopes at the end of it all makes sense here.
It did make sense that time. It did make sense that time.
The Jets' defense was not good last year. The Jets on paper, he didn't want to answer the question because he knew where I was going to lead him into it.
Nope.
Because we just went ahead and talked about how the Falcons have the best team on paper, but somehow he's going to discard that. But he's going to go ahead and say, oh, well, the Jets have the best team on paper, so they're going to win the division.
And they actually played last year without Aaron Rodgers and looked like a really good team that need to win now.
The Jets looked like a good team.
They did.
Did you watch any football last year, Chris?
I did.
The Jets did not have a good team. And
literally you and I exchanged texts, which I'm going to have to share, saying that if only they had Aaron Rodgers.
Okay. Let's use common sense here to where obviously the team was improved. And any single team that does not lose their starting quarterback unless you're the Giants. The Giants, you can lose Daniel Jones and be better. But anybody else,
we can agree on that.
Lose your starting quarterback, you're going to suffer. So obviously the Jets will be a better team with Aaron Rodgers compared to who they have, backing them up here. So the Jets, yes, I get it. You talk about low-bearing fruit, what people are talking about, the paper champions, people already crowning them. We're not doing anything else here. The Jets are always the Jets. I do not care what's on paper. We talked about who's won the AFC East in previous podcasts this year, and I said the Jets always find a way to lose because they're the Jets. So I don't care what's going to happen. Something's going to happen. I don't wish it. I can't stand the Jets, a lifelong Jets hater, But seeing what happened to Aaron Rodgers in the beginning, that even bothered me. It's like I felt bad for Jets fans here. That's not going to happen again, but something's going to happen because it always happens. Whether it's Mark Sanchez in the butt fumble, whether it's what just happened with Aaron Rodgers, it doesn't matter. Whether you start thinking Chad Pennington's your guy and he actually won a division, we're going to do something. Nope, it doesn't matter. The Jets always find a way to lose, so no. The team who is bouncing back, the one who's actually going to go ahead and rise to the occasion. I see it's a flow here, Chris. I start with players and teams. It's obviously the Cincinnati Bengals. The Cincinnati Bengals are getting their prime guy back. They have all the key pieces here. You're going to go from being 9-8 like they did last year. Now, this is a team who went 9-8. 9-8 without one of the best quarterbacks in the game. They went 9-8 without him. Now, granted, they are in not arguably, they are in the most difficult division in football. The AFC North is no joke this year. And really, you can make an argument for the AFC North and the NFC North. It's incredibly difficult, but still, the North is where it's at. But that's going to battle test them. That's going to get them ready. They obviously have everything. This is their last hurrah for the Cincinnati Bengals for a little while. Now, they're going to revamp and have to draft and everything else here, but they made the Super Bowl a couple years ago. Now, with Burrow 100% healthy, with chasing, no pun intended, chasing that contract. We got, obviously, what I referenced with Higgins, this is last year. So these things are going to go ahead and push the Bengals to be not just have the MVP of the year, but have the greatest bounce back year of not just a player, but as a team. You're welcome, Chris. You're welcome.
Florida Man Sports, if you have not turned us off yet, I appreciate you because Johnny, once again, just low fruit Johnny, folks, wants to give us what we all know.
You don't even follow
Excuse me, sir. I bit my tongue.
Who's bouncing back?
I bit my tongue.
The City Chiefs are bouncing back.
I never said that. I bit my tongue. I bit my tongue, sir. But you know what the problem with Johnny, man? The problem he has is that all he does is go on his phone when he's in the restroom and he just looks at the top headlines and he just follows along with that narrative and he wants to bring this on the show. When I know that when you tune in, you're looking for new breaking insights. Things that you haven't seen in other stuff. So thank you, Johnny, for once again gracing us with your presence and giving us what every other station already told us. Guess what? If your player's healthy, then they're going to have a good year, like the Bengals or Joe Burrow.
Isn't that what you just said? With the Jets? Isn't that exactly what you just said with the Jets?
No, I did not. Okay. I did not because not only is Aaron Rodgers healthy, but it's a team that nobody expects to win the division, and you heard it here first. Mic drop.
This is what I love about this guy who wants to sit here and be like, oh, you're picking up every single sportscast, everybody says the same thing. The Jets are winning the division. Everybody says the Jets are winning the division.
That's not true.
If you look at the AFC, everyone, the only person you've heard say the Jets are not winning the division is this guy here who picked the Dolphins. Right there. Look at the logo. Right there. The Dolphins to win the AFC East. The only guy everyone, including Chris, picked the Jets because on paper they're the best team. But I am reminding you, everybody else, that they're still the Jets.
Well, listen, folks,
depending
on when you're listening to this podcast, again, we want to thank you because we are, as always, streaming on all platforms. But we are basically, Johnny, a week away, one more preseason game before the regular season starts. And already, Johnny, we have some quarterback battles going on, some coaches naming quarterback starters. And then you have a quarterback, unfortunately, that's injured. So those are the big three we're going to talk about now, Johnny. And let's start with the Vikings. And let's start with J.J. McCarthy, who had a very, very good preseason, only to get hurt. And so now that he's injured, Johnny, my question for you is for the Vikings, what do? Do they do anything at all? What are your thoughts there?
Let's take a brief moment It's a moment of silence for the Minnesota Vikings. The Minnesota Vikings, boy.
Put a bullet in my head and kill me right now. I'll do it. Do it! Do it! I'll do it.
Dang.
Have had some terrible luck. Let's run down the list here, Chris. First, right before the season starts, their rookie corner dies in a tragic accident. The starting cornerback tears ACL first practice here. The other starting corner injured in the second practice. Pro Bowl tight end Hawkinson, he injures ACL, out for months. Their best player outside of Jefferson. Addison, their number 2 receiver, gets carted off the field in practice. The backup wide receiver goes down with an injury, and it's like you mentioned, their number 1 pick, their future, their dude, everything was right there for J.J. McCarthy to go and take over. He tears up his knee, out for the year. My God, to be a Minnesota Vikings fan right now, I'm sorry. Everything is falling off for you. Right now, the whispers that I'm hearing, Chris, I don't know if you heard this right now, is that Minnesota is actually talking to the Saints to try and see if there's a possibility to bring Derek Carr to the Vikings. I'm not sure if this is a good choice. They should do that.
That's not going to happen.
That's whispers. It's going off of the whispers that's going on there.
Stop listening to your kids. Stop listening to your kids.
So right now, who do they got? They got Sam Darnold as their guy. So you have Sam Darnold. So the Vikings have to determine, are they going to run it with Sam? Are they going to make a trade? Do you run it? I have an idea what they should do, but do you think they should run it with Sam Darnold or make a trade?
Yeah, well, now I'll give you my answer real quick since you like to go on your rants. I'm going to say do absolutely nothing, Minnesota. Do nothing.
Stay with Sam Darnold.
Do nothing. Stick with Sam Darnold. Look, Kevin O'Connell, I'm a big O'Connell fan with what he did just in 1 year with Kirk Cousins. So I'm actually kind of grateful. I want to see what 6'3", 27-year-old Sam Darnold can do with this coach. This is kind of like if you go back to Darnold and Mayfield going at it in Carolina. Remember they went at it, and then obviously Mayfield having success in Tampa. So this could be a really good way for this kid to revitalize his career. And again, we always talk about this on paper. Injuries aside, the Minnesota Vikings have a really good team. So they have
injuries aside, everybody that matters is injured.
Well, you mentioned Hawkinson. He's coming back this year. He's not out for the year.
Yeah, he's out for months.
The other quarterback,
months,
the other cornerback should be ready for week 1. So there's people that are healing.
Yeah, that's why we don't know his name. He's the other.
Right. Well, but he should be ready for week 1. So my point again is do nothing because 1, you're going to see what you have in Sam Darnold. Number 1. And then number 2, Johnny, if they have a terrible season because they have a top 10 schedule this year, right? If they have a terrible season, well, guess what? Now J.J. McCarthy's ready for next year with better draft picks. So you don't do anything. And the last thing I'll say about this is this. If you try to do something, not like that because that's not going to happen, but like let's say you try to knock on the Patriots door for Joe Milton, right? Because there's a quarterback battle there. Just as an example.
Okay.
And you bring him on. The worst thing you could do is do that, and then McCarthy next year has another battle, and you have this can of worms, if you will. So that's not the answer for me, Johnny. You asked me what I would do. I would do nothing. Let Darnold play out and see what happens.
So you're saying that if they make a move, hypothetically, nobody's saying they're knocking on the door for Joe Milton, but hypothetically bringing in and having that quarterback battle is a bad thing. Competition is always good, especially you're talking about the NFL. However, no, you don't go out and get a Joe Milton. You can get these young guys. I have a solution for the Vikings. Solution for the Vikings is clear.
Here we go.
Pick up a veteran quarterback. Chris. It's not that complicated.
Okay, give me a name.
I'm about to give you a name.
Okay.
A veteran quarterback. Because a veteran quarterback's going to be there, and even if he still does well, you still have JJ on that rookie contract, as you should. Even Tom Brady talked about it. It's his first year, he sat there with the clipboard and learned and came in second year. So there's so many benefits. Aaron Rodgers was there for years watching Brett Favre. There's so many benefits from having your number 1 quarterback sit and watch somebody who's actually really good do it. So this is pretty simple. Minnesota, you know what you need to do. You need to go and trade for Kirk Cousins. Kirk Cousins is coming back to Minnesota. You went ahead and they can go ahead. The Falcons, you have Penix. Everybody's laughing at you with this trade you made here. So go ahead and run it with Penix. Go ahead and make the trade. Get some draft capital back because you made a terrible mistake. Go ahead and trade. And then Minnesota recognizes their own mistake because JJ's out. JJ can sit and watch Kirk. Give him a 2-year deal. It's essentially the 2-year deal is really what he has with the Falcons here. So go ahead, make that same offer. And yes, you'll lose a number 1 pick. Give that number 1 first-round pick over to the Falcons. Falcons, save face for making one of the dumbest moves of all time. In Minnesota, you said, all right, my bad. I should have just paid the guy the money. I lowballed him here. Chris said for sure, without a doubt, that they're re-signing Cousins. Minnesota, he was going to stay. It didn't happen, but he's usually wrong, so nobody's surprised. But we're going to fix all of this. Kirk Cousins going back to Minnesota. You're welcome.
Do you bring anything good to the table? I mean, when we do these shows, we don't really we have no idea what we're going to say. We don't, if you haven't figured that out yet. But do you bring anything of use to this table?
Bring this, see this?
Okay, I'm glad you have a hat on this time. Look, what you're basically saying is
Yeah, maybe you need a hat, bro.
what you're basically saying is, Johnny, is that they're going to go ahead and do whatever trade to bring him back. And then what do they do next year with J.J. McCarthy and Cousins? What happens then?
What do you mean what happens then?
Exactly.
Okay.
It doesn't matter what you think. At the end of the day,
What do you mean what happens? I just
that's
explained what happens.
That's how
Oh my
nonsense,
God.
the nonsense that comes out of your mouth. I shouldn't even address it. People are laughing right now at that thought process.
What are we doing?
So
what are we
would you rather
doing
have,
with
folks?
J.J. McCarthy?
Hey guys,
exactly
hey guys,
what,
hey guys, hey guys.
what
I'm
they're
gonna leave
doing
it at
with
this.
Penix and
I'm
Cousins.
going to leave it at this. I'm going to leave it at
Exactly
this.
what every other
the Vikings
franchise.
are not the Falcons. The Vikings know what they're doing. So I'm going to leave it at this. I'm going to leave it at this.
Brady sat and watched.
I'm going to leave it at
Rodgers
this.
sat and watched.
What you're basically
all great
what you're basically
quarterbacks
saying
usually
is
sat and watched.
what you're basically saying is you acknowledge that the Minnesota Vikings do not have a very good team that is injured riddled this season, and your solution is to bring back Kirk Cousins to do it again. What I'm telling you is see what you have in Darnold. If you plummet, guess what?
we got
McCarthy's
Darnold.
healthy next year. Well, then guess
why-
what?
why
Then
we-
you
why
have
we
a
still
better.
waiting to
Then
see
you
what we
have.
have in
Then you
Darnold?
have better picks for next year for McCarthy. So I'm right
God.
and you're wrong once again.
We're waiting to see
Now,
with Darnold. Darnold, we have no idea
We
what's
just
happening with
established.
Darnold.
We just
know
established.
what happened with Darnold. Darnold is Daniel Jones.
And then you can treat him mid-season because he has a good season under the coach, under O'Connell. So, once again, I'm writing's wrong, folks. Florida Man Sports. That's what's going on with the Minnesota Vikings, Johnny Cinco. But now the Raiders, who you said are going to have a much better season, we disagreed on that, just announced that Minshew is their starter. What are your thoughts
I
on
don't
this?
have a problem with Minshew. I don't know why people have such beef. They look at Minshew, they think something wrong. Minshew was solid with Jacksonville. He was drafted. He was a good quarterback with Jacksonville. He was solid as the backup for the Eagles. He's a good quarterback who just hasn't had the opportunity. Why? Jacksonville's doing well, but obviously they had the number 1 overall pick. They had to go ahead and make the moves they made, so it's obvious why they move on from him. The Eagles, same thing. He backed up Hurts very well. He's a good quarterback who hasn't had the opportunity, now has the opportunity. Honestly, you know who he reminds me a lot of, Minshew? Reminds me a lot of Baker Mayfield.
Oh, my God.
He does remind me a
my
lot of
God.
Baker. They have a very similar approach. The game is almost identical. I like Minshew scrambles a little bit better, but I like Minshew. He looks like a Raider. He's the guy. Regardless whether it's O'Connell or Minshew, both got stellar mustaches. They're both going to go ahead and rock it out. They both look like they live in a trailer, but still. It's going to be a solid competition between those two guys here. I don't expect the Raiders to go ahead and just have a dominant year, but I'm telling you, I would not be surprised if somehow the Raiders snuck into the playoffs as a wild card. I will not be surprised.
Oh, that's funny.
I will not be surprised if that happens here.
Okay.
I'm telling you, Minshew is going to have a better year than a lot of people expect. You have a bunch of haters like Chris over here who'll sit here and tell you how great Baker Mayfield is. And this guy's identical. He's the exact same guy.
Oh,
If you look at them play, you wouldn't even be able to tell. You put him on either one's team. Nobody will tell the difference except from his stellar mustache.
So let me just start here, right? 62% career passing completion percentage for his career. 7, not 7.8, not 8.5, 7 yards per pass average for his career. Talking about a guy who has a 59 to 24 touchdown to interception ratio, and last year regressed and gave you 15 to 9. And that's the guy that he's saying is compared to Baker Mayfield.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, actually.
So
thank you for
the
for
reality
really
the
putting
reality
a cement
yeah
stamp on
yeah
everything I said.
exactly.
That seems all right. But you take away that 1 year from Baker, the numbers are almost identical.
Terrible. So here's what's going to happen, and here's what needs to happen, folks. And this is why you get two perspectives: one's right, one's wrong. Raiders. I almost said Oakland again. I'm aging myself.
I know,
Raiders. If you're listening,
I'm usually right, usually wrong.
if you're listening to
makes
this,
sense.
Raiders, what I need from you, it's very simple. It's very simple. get Joe Milton. You want to save your career coach, first-year coach, get Joe Milton. I'm telling you right now, that's what you need to do. Would you rather have a 6'5", 24-year-old or a 6'1", 28-year-old who's who's going to give you more interceptions? It's going to be 50-50 this year. What would you rather have? He is not the answer, and the Raiders are going to plummet because of it.
Chris, let me ask you a question. A 6th-round pick is essentially what you're saying with Joe Milton is from the Patriots here. Why would the Patriots? Why would they move on from a 6th-round pick that's costing them nothing? It's costing them $10 in a value meal. Yep. That's essentially what's costing them. So, what the Raiders would have to give up for that 6th-round pick?
3rd-round pick.
So they're not
3rd-round pick.
They're not
3rd-round pick.
They're not going to offer a 3rd-round pick.
They should. And the Patriots would take it, and nobody would complain.
The Patriots are not going to take it because there's a lot more upside in Joe Milton as being the number 3 quarterback on the depth chart for the Patriots than a 3rd-round pick. So, the Patriots, there's no reason to go ahead and get rid of him here. There's no whatsoever, especially at this point. Maybe, possibly, Chris, next season, right before the draft, after we go through the season, then we can see, like, okay, let's go ahead and make some moves here. But it would be idiotic for the Patriots to really move on from Joe Milton under any circumstances, with the exception of a 1 or 2. 1 or 2, you got to actually listen to it and really consider it. But a number 3, no.
A number 3, 4, or 6, nobody would complain considering.
I'm not
how they're
saying
playing.
nobody would complain.
And
I'm not saying that. No, yes, on paper you're right.
And I'm going to tell you, you don't know if you don't ask. And all I'm saying is that Minshew, we can agree to disagree on here. Minshew's not the answer for the Raiders. And ultimately, I could see Minshew playing though he does all year, guys. This is what he does. This is what Minshew does. He'll give you 3-4 games, and then you put your rookie in. That's exactly what needs to happen if you get Milton.
Even if Minshew doesn't have the year I think he's going to have, listen, O'Connell played well. I watched some O'Connell. Do you think he played that bad? The Raiders last year, like O'Connell he played well for them. He was,
if he did enough, he would be the starter right
now.
No,
I'm not saying he did enough, but remember, he was only in there for a few games. But in a few games,
but during the offseason, if he preseason and all that, had he
there's a reason why Minshew is a starter, because they battled and he won.
That's what I just
said.
So
it reminds me a lot of Baker Mayfield and Trask. And the battle they had, which you were hyping up Trask, saying he's the heir apparent to Brady, and I said that's a joke because he's trash. And it's not, and I was right because he's trash. I even watching the preseason game with Trask, I'm like, what? Why are you still on this team?
I'm not going to fall for your low fruit, but we are talking a lot about Milton, Johnny. We are talking a lot about Milton, so let's jump into the last one here, which is that QB battle between May and Milton. And one thing before you give me your perspective of what's going on here. Last episode, or unfortunately, probably you didn't get to see it, but last episode we talked about how Coach Mayo, he went ahead already and announced that we had a starter. Well, he basically has backpedaled from that, and it's no longer that there's a starter. So there's still a battle here.
You know why? He listened to Florida Man Sports.
There's still a battle here.
Even though it wasn't here, it was a podcast. He listened to it, and we talked about it. And yes, for the longest, everybody was saying that Jacoby Brissett is the starter. And I get it. Patriot fans, we understand Jacoby is a former player. We drafted him. He was good, and we traded him. We needed a defensive player. We traded him years ago. And even, Belichick wasn't happy about it, because if you want something good, you got to give up something good. And the good player we gave up was Jacoby. But we talked about it, and all we're hearing about is this battle between a 6th-round pick who's dominating practice and preseason, dominating your number 1 overall pick, who was the number 3 overall pick. And it's something to where you have to reassess and understand where you're at. The Patriots this season have, on paper, the most difficult schedule in the NFL. You have the most difficult schedule.
Took you 47 minutes. You actually said something that makes sense.
You have
47 minutes.
The worst receiver room in the NFL. You have one of the worst defenses in the NFL. You don't have anything of substance. You try to correct it. You try to make a move to bring up, Niners wide receiver, Brennan Ajuke, whatever, like Eddie says, very Dominican style, Ajuke. But it didn't work out because he said, no, I don't want to come to the Patriots. It's funny how team falls off so quick. Everybody will take pay cuts to go to the Patriots. Now it's like, nah, I'm good. I'm rebuilding. That's fine. Patriots rebuild. We'll be back on top. But the Patriots are not going to – there's no way. As a poker player that I am, I play the odds and play the probabilities. You're telling me that the Patriots somehow are going to hit that magic again with a 6th-round pick? Brady, we all know, 6th-round pick race of all time. You tell me the Patriots did it again. Joe Milton is going to be an elite quarterback. He looks good. But I'm not looking at it as a fan goggles. Like, Chris looks at everybody on the Bucs and says, oh, my God, they're great. I've heard it for years and years. Everybody's going to be a Hall of Famer. So for me, looking at this, I'm like, okay, I'm seeing Joe Milton play well in practice. I'm seeing him play well in preseason against 3rd and 4th stringers. So I'm not convinced on Joe Milton, mainly because the probability of hitting a 6th-round pick again is unlikely. But you got to give Drake May his shot. You got to throw him out there and let him take his lumps and see what you got. Now, at the end of this year, if he looks that bad, then you don't do the mistake that the Niners did with Trey Lance and hold on to him too long. No. Then you say, you know what? Yes, he still has he was number one pick for us as a team, number 3 overall. Now, then you can maybe see if you can trade him for a number 2 or even a number 3 next year if it doesn't work out. If he gives you a horrendous, Bryce Young type year, then think about moving on from him and starting Joe Milton. So that's what the Patriots need to do. It is a bit of a mess, but it's a good mess. It's a good problem to have. But please, New England, stop thinking you're going to win games. Chris thinks you're going to go ahead and somehow win more than the 3 games you're projected to win. I don't. I see you winning 3 or 4 games, which I'm fine with. Don't do anything dumb and start winning 7 or 8 games. That's going to give you middle-of-the-pack draft pick. Get that number 1 overall, New England. Let's go ahead and reboot it.
Yeah, to your point we just said there, Johnny, I'm predicting I'm going to stick to it 6-7 games, and that's with May, with Drake May at the helm. So that's not even with Brissett. And furthermore, man, like look, let me give you Coach Mayo. I don't like to read quotes, but this is an important quote because it happened this week. This is Coach Mayo talking about Drake May. This guy comes in early, leaves late. Every day he's one of those type of guys. He's done a great job. I would also say the coaches have done a good job meeting with him one-on-one, making sure he's comfortable with his team play. He's absolutely getting better. That, to me, Johnny, end quote, is the sound of a coach who invested such a high pick on this kid who is going to be the starter for this team. So for me, while there is another game left, Johnny, while there is another game for them to have a QB battle between the two, I think that this guy is the answer for New England. I really do. And I've said this in previous episodes. And I just think that you have a gold mine in Milton as well. So why not strike while the iron's hot? Why not get a 3rd-round pick for Milton? Because this Drake May is the New England Patriots team, period.
Now, yes, you have to go ahead and see what Drake May can do. Regardless, you invested too much capital in this guy.
Him and Brissett.
It's
get
not,
Milton
you have
out of there.
to.
Yeah.
So, no, you get rid of Brissett and just have him and Milton and ride it out and see what's going to happen there. Now, here's the main thing with me. That what you just referenced there, you're saying like that Mayo invested so much in this. We talked about in a pre-draft show, we talked about different things. But talking about the Patriots, I was very clear that if the Patriots, and I advise them to not pick up Drake May, but if you do, that trade 100% is coming from Jonathan Kraft. That's an ownership pick. Mayo, I'm telling you, would have traded the pick, would have went on from it and see, because the Giants wanted him. The Giants were going to give you the farm. They're going to give you a similar thing to what Carolina did with the Bears. So if they're offering you a package, and all reports say that's what they were offering, they should have made the move. They didn't. But the ownership, when they get their noses involved in things like this is why the New England Patriots and the Kraft family has done a very good job of letting Belichick just run his team. Belichick didn't draft all the greatest, but still, you didn't make foolish decisions like this. If somebody's going to go ahead and give you the farm for the move up a few picks, go ahead and take it. Take it and move on from it there. But this, that quote you just read there, that for me, that 100% was just to save face. And why do you say save face? Look at what just came out regarding Flores and Tua. So Tua, if you've read the reports, they talked about how his first couple years, he felt like he didn't belong. That coach, former coach for the Dolphins, Flores, would run this fool down, say you don't belong here, and you start believing that negativity. And then obviously the new coach, Daniels, comes in and tells him, no, dude, you're great. And that positive reinforcement kind of changes that mindset. And coaches learn from it. That's not a coincidence this quote came out right around that same time frame to where you're like, no, this was not his pick. Mayo didn't want Drake May, but he's not dumb enough to go ahead on record and say anything negative. No, he's going to keep it positive. But make no mistake, he didn't want him.
And Johnny, a rant aside, he's playing well. He had a really good preseason game. He's playing well. He's done enough. He's done enough to reopen the conversation with Brissett. So no, I think it's Drake May, and I think that the Patriots are on the right track, get rid of Milton. I stand by what I said.
No, you've been hyping up Milton more than anybody I know.
In the draft, when it happened, I text everybody. I text everybody. I'm like, this is a steal.
Let's
steal.
adjust this real quick here.
Okay.
Not during the draft. Okay, after the first preseason game and the practices and the reports were coming out in practices, you were the first guy I heard from. But let's make clear here that it was after the reports came out, practices, he's killing it. Like that, you're like, hey Johnny, hey, this Joe Milton dude's no joke. What are you talking about? You didn't sit here and tell me in the draft, the 6th round pick, hey, Joe Milton's the dude who's going to be good. They're
when we were doing our stuff and we were talking about Bo Nix, if you remember that, we're talking about all those players. During that was pre-draft, Johnny, and during that time I even said Joe Milton. I even talked about Milton then.
Okay.
And I advise if anybody's still listening right now to please go and look at those episodes pre-draft and you'll see that I was right and he was wrong.
Then prove me wrong, but I'm rarely wrong. But but if you're going to sit here and hype up Joe Milton and say that, man, this guy has such potential, he's so well, why would you get rid of somebody who's not only has a high ceiling, that's cheap as it gets?
I'm answering your question, Johnny, and I'm going to say it one last time because, one, you drafted May for a reason. You drafted him that high, and I was high on him too. I said between the top 3 picks, I had him higher.
What drafting high didn't do anything?
Yeah. Because when you invest on a player like that, you have to give him the opportunity, right?
No.
Number two, I'm talking about the Patriots selling high. Like, make me an offer I can't refuse. Give me a 3rd round pick. I'll do that.
I can refuse a 3rd round pick.
I'm not refusing a 3rd round pick.
I just explained you can refuse a 3rd round pick. Because
for a 6th round pick for a guy who's going to stay on the bench, to your point, for the next 3 years, no, I'll take a 3rd round pick.
Here's the thing: you're saying Brady 6th round pick. He was on the bench for 1 year, and then injury happens to Bledsoe. He comes back. History's made. Okay, so you're saying now, he's going to be on the bench. The upside for Milton is significantly higher than a 3rd rounder. Right. So I said you have to consider a 1st or 2nd rounder. You have to really sit and consider it. But no team's going to offer you off of the practice and whatnot. So for that, you just hold on to him. You have him cheap. This is like
the Raiders might.
This is like San Francisco going ahead and getting rid of Mr. Irrelevant. Because there's upside there. Not now. I'm talking about like after the first year or right around that time frame. Like after the first year, he looks really good, but let's go ahead and get rid of him for a 3rd rounder. No, there's more upside there. There's been tons of stories. You're over here because they drafted him so high. That's why you have to hold on to Drake May. Because you've invested so much, you're forced to deal with it for now. You have to, because you're landlocked.
Your Patriot bloodlines is continuing this segment, but I said what I said.
Yes, but I understand, but you don't understand you're wrong.
Okay, whatever.
You don't understand that?
Whatever.
You're wrong,
Whatever.
Chris. You are wrong, but it's okay. It's all right, man. And our listeners are used to Chris being wrong, and that's what all the emails I get. That's why they love you. They like hearing a guy who's just completely wrong constantly.
That's what it is. Okay. Florida Man Sports, streaming on all platforms. Those are the segments, Johnny. So this is the part where you talk about the power rankings, my boy.
No, honestly, for us, like we're talking about this, and I'm looking at how long we've been talking. I'm like, all right, the show's done. It has to be done by now.
No, yeah.
But, we have to talk about power rankings because one guy insists on discussing power rankings. And the season
you announced it in the beginning of the show. People are literally waiting for this part. So go ahead. Let's go.
I don't think anybody's waiting for this part.
Let's go.
Yes, the power rankings are out, Chris. And there's about 6 guys in the world that care about power rankings and
they're listening. The six streams that we have.
The preseason at the moment here. So specifically, let's focus on our Florida teams. We have the Jaguars, who have the 14th ranked. The Miami Dolphins 8th. And the Tampa Bay Buccaneers ranked 21. Chris, with those rankings there, do you agree with them? Is there anything you want to change on them? Is it something are you upset that the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are ranked so high? They should be lower.
Yeah, you're a smart guy. Almost said a bad word. Look, folks, I'm going to start Florida Man Sports. I'm going to give you just some quick, because people absolutely love during the preseason, once the games are done, how we start the power rankings, because this is where we started, right? Where we finish, nobody knows. Yeah. So the Miami Dolphins, they start at number 8. And for me, that is too high. Okay? Point blank, it is way too high. You're talking about a team, Johnny, who has questions at the running back position. Can they stay healthy? Okay. You're talking about a team that Waddle had a bad year last year by his standards, so can he step up this year? You're talking about a team who, I'm not going to name all these guys, Johnny, but they lost a handful of guys on defense, from Wilkins to Xavier Howard and, of course, Baker Jerome Baker, among others.
Yeah.
You're talking about a team who tried to get Shaquille Barrett and he retired. Insult to injury. So for me, Johnny, the Miami Dolphins at number 8 is absolutely way too high. You remember last year was the first year that Tua actually played 17 games. So can he do that back to back? We don't even know yet. And so for me, it's too high.
Such a hater.
The
no,
question
mark was,
not
can
a hater.
he do it? And then he did it. Can you do it again? I'm like,
no. That is exactly the question.
All right, sure.
And so when I pick the Jets to win this division, of course, also just not being biased, being real here, Johnny. I think that's way too high. I see them. They should have started for me at number 9 or number 10. And this season, they're going to hover between 9 and 12. What are your thoughts on Miami?
I think Miami is slightly too high. I still see them in the top 10, but I have them, like you said, top 10, number 10. They should have been at the 10 because they're offensively, they are a juggernaut, but defensively they're lacking. And they lost a defensive coordinator, and defensive coordinator left to Philadelphia mainly because he talked about the lack of effort. That the defensive players, that's when he had control of, were more interested in the Miami nightlife than prepping for their game. And honestly, it showed. So, but man, that offense is so good. We'll see if the new defensive coordinator is going to make those adjustments. Losing Howard, I don't think is that big of a. Howard was a cancer.
It is a big deal.
Howard was a mess. Howard was such a mess. There's a reason why nobody jumped on to pick up Howard after he was the one released from the Dolphins.
Money.
No, it's not just because
money and his wife. Yeah.
Yeah, it's mainly the extracurriculars, the nonsense that comes with Howard. It's like, yes, you were a great player, and now you're a good player, but I don't want the extra nonsense for a good player. I'm not going to deal with it. So Howard, I don't think it's that big of a deal. I think it's a much bigger deal with the other players you've mentioned. Shaq, we talked about Shaq and him not joining the Dolphins. He's choosing his family and his health first. Nothing to do with the Dolphins, but ultimately there are question marks regarding the defense for Miami, and I can understand that. The question marks do bring up a valid point. That's the only reason why you're number 10 and not number 8.
Okay, so we kind of agree there as far as that goes. And then the Jacksonville Jaguars, Johnny, you said they were 14. Way too high. I wonder who does these power rankings and whoever. I mean, like, they need to be fired. No, they need to be fired because you're talking about a team that after the draft, their stock actually dropped. They dropped 1 in the power rankings at that time. They didn't make a huge splash during the offseason, Johnny. They did get some names in, like Davis. And, I'm very high on him this year. But that's only on paper. They got to play together. They got to build continuity. You're talking about a team who last year regressed, took a step backwards offensively. And then you're talking about a team that has a coach that's on the hot seat. So for me, I don't understand why this 14 ranking in a division where, and you said this, alluded to this earlier, that division has gotten a lot tougher this year too. That's icing on the cake, folks. So for me, they should be starting at 21, and they're going to hover between 19 and 23 this season. I don't know who's doing this, Johnny, but it's way too high.
Yeah, Jags going to be in the 20s. I don't know what the heck you have them at 14. Jaguars fans, I'm sorry, you had your shot, you missed it. Your last opportunity to do something, and you had it. I'm still mad about the fact that you guys had a 98% chance to make the playoffs after like week 12, and you guys just botched it. Complete collapse. I don't want to hear you had your shot, you blew it. Your team didn't improve that much. I mean, you picked up Gabe Davis. You were calling it. You called it beforehand. You're high on him. I'm not as high on him as you are. But they didn't draft well at all. You have Etienne, who's a beast, and you're hoping your quarterback who got the bag is actually going to go ahead and finish the whole season. So I get it, but everybody in that division got better. You're telling me the Texans are not going to win that division? You're telling me the Colts are not better? There's everybody.
And the Titans have stepped up.
Everyone. Yeah. It's better. But somehow the Jags, that was your last opportunity. Now, if you had showed out like you maybe should have, maybe you could have, got those key off-season acquisitions, maybe enticed them. They saw you're a winner. They see you as a choke artist. They see his organization as somebody they're not taken seriously. This is the last year for Doug Peterson. Doug Peterson, you better show up. You better pull a rabbit out of the hat, do something. But the Jaguars at 14 is a joke. You should be at 21, and that's still being very very pro-Florida. We're looking out for you with that 21 ranking there.
I couldn't agree more. And speaking of 21, Johnny, let's put a bow in this one in the power rankings. You mentioned the Bucs are at 21. And listen, folks, I know he's already going to go into his tangent that I'm such a big Buccaneer fan. But listen, folks, please. This is what you guys waited for at the end of the podcast here to talk about these power. Oh, that's what they waited for.
Okay.
And I don't want to scream so that you guys are hearing this. I got to lower the volumes. But this is just an atrocity. It's wrong in every way, shape, or form. It's wrong. It's irresponsible. The Bucs, we have a hell of a draft. We re-sign our own talent. Hell of an offseason. They had a great training camp. Everybody's coming out healthy for the most part, and you rank them 21. Are you kidding me? You've got year 2 of Baker Mayfield. You've got Mike Evans on the pinnacle of history this season.
Pinnacle.
The best center in the draft drafted. The best left tackle in the league. The best wide receiver. We stole the wide receiver in the draft. Bringing Chris Godwin back down to the middle where he has most success. Joe Tryon with his 5th-year option. He's hungry.
Joe Tryon?
Yeah, it's Tryon, how you pronounce it.
That's a good name.
The best safety in the NFL. We brought back Jordan Whitehead as well.
My God, we have the
Folks,
best.
Vita Vea
best
in the
players
best
everywhere.
shape of his career.
My God.
Should I keep going? No, I'll stop there, but I'm going to tell you guys this.
Are the Bucs going undefeated?
The Bucs at 21. If we were in oh man, it was the show was R-rated. I have something. 21. Are you guys joking? Are you kidding me? Or you guys purposely know that we're going to talk about this and you're going to piss me off? The Bucs right now should be ranked in the top 12. That's me being genuinely honest. Should be in the top 12, and they're going to hover. And they're going to hover. They're going to hover between 8 and 12 all season long. They're going to win the division. The Falcons are not. Bucs are going to win 3 times NFC South champions. You heard it here first.
Sure.
Power rankings. You're a joke.
Yeah, power rankings preseason.
So mad. That was PG.
Power rankings preseason are a joke, but you want to see your. Why are you such a fan, bro? Like, there's everything you just mentioned is all the negatives that I've mentioned, but you say it with a positive tone. You say you've been hanging around with too many politicians, Chris. So I'll sit here and say, hey, the Bucs just are running it back with the same players. You'll say, the Bucs re-signed everybody. We're bringing it back. And so, same thing, but one was said with such a positive, influx.
Because it's good. It's great. Yeah, imagine if we didn't re-sign players, to Johnny's point. Then he'd be like, they didn't re-sign Mike Evans. They couldn't re-sign their left tackle. They couldn't bring back their safety. That's what you would be crying about.
The problem is...
Yeah, say I'm wrong.
The problem is that all that they did was re-sign the same players. They re-signed Baker and Evans. Those are the 2 pieces. That's all they did. They didn't have a great draft. They had a C-plus draft. They had a decent draft. No impact players are going to go ahead and affect them at all this year. The free agency was essentially non-existent. So please don't sit here and try to tell me how the Buccaneers the Bucs didn't do anything except bring back the same talent. With the exception of Terminator 2, there's no sequels are never as good as the original. Okay, it's not. So you're going to go ahead and bring back the exact same cast, and everybody else in your division got better, and somehow you're going to go ahead and win a division. You're going to do it. Yes, Chris will sit here and say it when you're talking about the AFC. We're talking about the Texans. You're talking about that. Oh, look, everybody got better. How are you going to do anything, Jacksonville? And then the Buccaneers, it's the exact same thing. It's the exact same thing, except the Bucs did less than the Jaguars did, and somehow the Tampa Bay should be top 10. Come on, bro! Tampa Bay at 21 is being generous. Really is. At Tampa Bay, Jacksonville should be at 21, and at number 20 or 22, because I'm being generous, is where Tampa Bay needs to be. Tampa Bay and Jacksonville are the same team. They're the same team. This year, you're going to see they're going to be battling it out as the worst team in Florida, those 2 back and forth here. Because, sorry, fanboy here is going to sit here and try to tell you, I've never heard, we're never going to, I don't care how long this show goes on, we're never going to have a season where Chris sits here and says, the Bucs had a bad draft, or we're not going to win a division. That's what I've heard for 20 years from this guy. How every year, whether it's Josh Freeman, he's a Hall of Famer. Whether it's Jeff Garcia, he's revitalizing his career. He's bringing it back. Okay. It doesn't matter who the quarterback is. Now it's Baker Mayfield, who had a good season. He is not replicating that season this year. Why Tampa Bay's fallen off. Why Tampa Bay shouldn't be at 21. They should be 22. And at best, 20.
Folks, I'm going to go ahead and get offline now and beat the trash out of Johnny. Any last words before we leave this episode? I know we kind of went over our hour.
Oh man, we talked. We thought this was going to be a short episode, and here we
usual.
are. But it's the NFL. We start talking. We just can't shut up about it. So we're going to try to go ahead and listen. Well, I'll continue to see the emails and any tweets. Any suggestions you guys have, feel free to lay it out here. We're trying to shorten the show, but emails said they like to hear me talk. They don't like to hear Chris as much. But hey, it's okay. We're going to bounce that because we're a team here.
Thank you for tuning in, folks. As you know, football is back. He's Johnny. I'm Christian. We're out, folks.
We're out.